All right, Ty, are you all set to podcast?
Yep, I am all ready to go.
Um, well, for one thing, you're not even facing your camera. I don't know if you're
Oh,
aware of that.
sorry. Is that better?
Wrong way. So I'm assuming this is because you're not wearing your glasses. Why are you not wearing your glasses?
Well, we've been reading through a series of unfortunate events, and,
Sure.
Klaus wears glasses, right?
Yeah.
And then in the movie, then he doesn't really wear his glasses. So,
So you're thinking that this makes you look like a movie star?
yeah. I mean, doesn't it though?
Um, sure. I mean, Freddy Krueger is also a movie star, so
Huh.
that, yeah, movie star doesn't necessarily mean handsome. Just look at Paul Giamatti. That's mean. I
Oh
apologize,
dear.
Paul, if you're watching this podcast. Just saying, he's not the handsomest man in Hollywood.
Yeah. Am I
All
facing
right.
the right way now?
No, not even a little. Get your
Oh,
glasses on and let's get this thing going.
okay.
Hello and welcome to Mournful Mondays, presented by Ignore the Bell. This is not a Woeful Wednesday because we are doubling up this week. We're on Wednesday of this week, then we're going to have a Woeful Wednesdays discussion of the first couple episodes of the Netflix series, A Series of Unfortunate Events.
Yep.
But then for this week, then we are going to focus in for today on the Monday. Then we're going to look at the 2004 film, A Series of Unfortunate Events, or I guess Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events is how it's titled. And
Yes.
we ordinarily do movie discussions and film and television, all of that stuff on Mondays with Ignore the Bell, but we're kind of pairing it together with this series that we've been doing because we've been reading through all of the books in A Series of Unfortunate Events, and I have read them for the first time as part of the series. Tyler, you had read them a couple times before, including as a middle grade reader, and so now we are getting into the adaptations of the book series.
Yeah. Yeah. I am looking forward to talking about the Jim Carrey film, as well as watching the entire Netflix series again. But before we get into our discussion for today, I understand that we do have a sponsor.
We do. And yes, I should mention that I have not seen any of these adaptations before. So I just
Right.
watched the Jim Carrey adaptation for the first time, and then I'll watch the Netflix series for the first time.
Mm.
But yeah, so we do have a sponsor. So our sponsor for today's podcast is Brass Spyglasses for all of your VFD needs. I mean, you want to be able to identify other members of VFD and also be able to identify, opposing members after the Great Schism to see who's got a brass spyglass, and basically see them from a distance, which means, I guess, that you can run away or something, see fires off in the distance. I don't know. It was not really a thing in the books, but in this movie, that's more of an identifier than a tattoo, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I know it's quite a strange change,
Yeah, because a
but
tattoo isn't visual, but a spyglass is visual,
I don't know.
right? Because we have to make it visual. It's like the tattoo is already a visual motif.
Yeah.
But anyway, so brass spyglasses look through the brass hole and see Olaf the astringent jerk. It's a weird slogan. It feels like it's going to go in a different direction.
Yeah, very specific.
Yeah. I don't know. You would think they'd rhyme something with brass hole, but guess not. All right, folks. I hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, so we've set the timer for 30 minutes because if you're new to this particular podcast, if you've been following along with Woeful Wednesdays, then what we do on Ignore the Bell is we set a timer for a certain period of time, and then we basically talk at least until the bell goes off, and then typically if we're having a good conversation, we ignore it and we just keep going. So we've set it for 30 minutes for today. So we are talking about Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, Jim Carrey's adaptation-ish. We keep giving attribution to Jim Carrey, but I don't know, like, we could give it to the director, Brad Silberling, or to the screenplay by Robert Gordon, but I think most people think of it as the one with Jim Carrey. So
Yeah.
it's not so much that he should. It's just that he has received the attention, and so
yeah, absolutely. He was like in the advertisements for it. I remember in the trailers, then it actually said, you know, like it was listing off actors, and then it said Jim Carrey, Jim Carrey, Jim Carrey.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is a 2004 film. I just want to double check on that, but yeah, it's a 2004 film starring a lot of people. I was surprised at the cast that, that they were able to get for this film. So you've got Jim Carrey, Jude Law. I wonder how much Handler had to do with that. He's like, to play me, Jude Law. And it's like,
right.
Really? Yes. Exactly. Snicket is my persona, and I think that getting a very handsome Hollywood actor that fits, doesn't it? Right? Doesn't it feel
we're
like
not even going to see his face? Doesn't matter. It still needs to be him.
That's what I thought too. I'm like, they're not even using Jude Law in any real way, but still, I think it's just sort of like, yeah, they got Jude Law to play me in the film or my persona, and I'm like, Jude Law is way too suave to be Snicket. Snicket is buffoonish as a writer. He's so... Anyway, we can set that aside. I just thought, like, it doesn't make sense as a Snicket actor.
Yeah, I think they just wanted a suave, you know, English accent there.
Yeah, because they didn't know what tone to go for.
Right.
Because Snicket in the books is kind of buffoonish a lot of the times. He's not suave. He's not, you know, I don't know. He's so quirky that it would have made far more sense to have like a quirky type of actor play him.
Yeah.
I don't know who exactly off the top of my head, but anyway, Jude Law, fine. Leon Aiken, Emily Browning, Timothy Spall, Catherine O'Hara plays Justice Strauss, Billy Connolly. Billy Connolly is Uncle Monty, right?
Yes.
And then Cedric the Entertainer is a police officer.
Yeah.
I've been screaming about it for 13 books that there's no police officers in this entire community, and then they get Cedric the Entertainer, who isn't really taking his job all that seriously, to be fair.
Right. And he only says like 4 lines maybe in the entire movie.
Right. And then Luis Guzman, I think, who is, you know, woefully underused in this film.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Coolidge, and then Meryl Streep. So
yeah,
and there may be others as well, but like those are some big names that they were able to get. A huge budget for this movie, $140 million.
Yeah, I mean, it was produced by both Paramount and Nickelodeon.
Right.
So, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure a significant part of that budget went to Jim Carrey.
Yeah, but even giving him like 30 million, that's still, I mean, like, I think in part it's with the cast, but it's also with the production design. But it feels like that's way too big of a budget. Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're a producer and you're going to budget $140 million for, like, this is not Harry Potter. I don't get it. It's not, it's, but they wanted it to be, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't understand. Like, did they not read the books? These are not Harry Potter type books. They're not epic in scale and size and scope or anything. I've been saying it the entire time that we've been reading this series, that each book feels like it was written for a television show that's on a very limited budget. They go to a single setting in almost every single book, and it's not an overly expansive setting, and then they just stay there for the entire book. You could do this for much, much cheaper than this and actually make it profitable and be able to do all of the books in the series to adapt them into films if they were wise about their budget. But if you blow the budget out like that, you're just not going to make the money back.
Yeah, I think another big factor in the budget was the use of CG, because they did a significant amount of that for... I think mainly like for the backgrounds, and and so I imagine that, you know, quite a lot went to that, and it was nominated for an Academy Award for makeup, I believe. So
Well,
Yeah.
visually, it looks good.
Yeah.
There's only a couple parts where I thought it didn't look great, but otherwise, it looks really good visually.
Mhm.
But it still seems like they could have and should have done more with less.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. It's such an odd product of its time, this post Harry Potter world where every studio was like, "Hey, we have to get a, major franchise geared toward kids."
Yep.
And so, yeah, because Nickelodeon had purchased the rights to the series in 2000, which
Hmm.
like the series had only been out for like 2 years at that point.
Right. Right.
Handler he was contracted to do the screenplay. He did a few drafts of it for a different director, um, and I forget whether it was him or the director at the time who approached Jim Carrey and got him on board with the project. But I think partly due to budgetary concerns, I don't know, exactly what they were, but some kind of budgetary concerns, then yeah, they ended up going with a different director, and
Mm.
that director basically threw out all of Handler's screenplay and, gave it to somebody new.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so it's quite the interesting history there.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's not all that unusual for adaptations, especially adaptations that have got big expectations.
Yes, yeah.
Uh, and so I just like, can I just make a few comments first,
Hmm.
generally speaking, about adaptations, and then I want to get your thoughts on the movie, and then I guess we can get into mine, or I can give my thoughts first. But
Hmm.
anyway, I want to just mention at the beginning that I think that because I mean, I've done it professionally, but it's like completely amateur stuff that I'm doing. But as a teacher, then I've had enough students give as an English teacher, give presentations and talking about adaptations, right?
Hmm.
That I've done this in the classroom. And one of the things that I find that especially younger people tend to do when they're evaluating how effective an adaptation is they tend to evaluate it by how accurate it is in terms of the actual source material.
Yeah.
So the more closely it just recreates and represents the action in the exact same order with the exact same characters and same dialogue, the closer it gets to replicating that but on screen, the better it is,
Right.
so to speak. And the more liberties it takes with the material, the worse it is. And to say it's bad because they did something different. And
Right.
and I mean, I know that like you're on the same page as me with this, and anybody who's actively followed the podcast and like how we feel about this. But I think it's good criticism to say that you have to evaluate a film on its own merits, regardless of the source material.
Hmm.
Um, with that being said, then I think there does need to be like it's challenging making an adaptation because you're trying to both satisfy fans of the series, of the book series, let's say, or if it's a video game or whatever else, an older movie or TV show, whatever it happens to be that you're adapting, that you want to satisfy the original fans of the series. So you want to stay true to character, theme, and tone,
Hmm.
but like the characters should remain consistent with the characters in the source material. And unless there's something like that just really wasn't working with some of them, then maybe you
Right.
can play with it a little bit. But like typically that would be secondary characters, not your primary characters. So
Hmm.
characters should essentially be the same characters in the film as they are in the books. The themes should be essentially the same. And then the tone, which is challenging um, to focus on, but like the tone needs to be there. It needs to be consistent
Yeah.
between the two. And then as far as the plot, like the plot can change. You can introduce new characters and then do whatever you want and have them interact with your established characters. You can even take out some of your secondary characters in the source material and just remove them from the adaptation. And all that stuff's fine. But to me, the most important thing is it has to be able to work for new fans who have not read the source material and established fans who have, but everything else can change except for character, theme, and tone, as far as I'm concerned. Like, because I have no issues. I don't know about you. I have no issues with what they do with the order of the plot in this.
Yeah. No, I think that it works very well because it's, it would not have made much sense to really break it down into 3 distinct chapters as the books are, or anything like that.
And it does a good job having the wedding at the end of the film. It does a good job of linking that back to the beginning with Olaf and the theater troupe, and then instead of it just feeling like we're now so far removed from the introduction of the film that it ends up being almost like a framing device, where we come back to his house and all that stuff. So stuff that gets introduced in the first act of the film is there in the final act of the film. That I actually liked that about it. And there's stuff where I thought it worked in terms of pacing. I thought it was good that we didn't get much time with the reptile room with Uncle Monty. I think that you definitely want more time with him, but otherwise, if you just end up spending just as much time with him as we did in the first act and then with Aunt Josephine, that it kind of flies through all of those things. And anyway, I just thought that it worked in terms, like, parts of it work in terms of pacing.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I do have one, minor note to throw in here. Which, on the note of the reptile room, which, we don't spend very much time with that at all. But Uncle Monty says, when the children first arrive, he says, we're going to go to Peru tomorrow. And then, they go to sleep. They wake up the next morning. Uncle Monty is already dead. And then Count Olaf, or Stefano, says, oh, yes, we're planning on going to Peru tomorrow. And it's like, wait, what? You changed the plans? I know it's a minor thing.
No. I think that's fair. I mean, they're definitely... I feel like you can look at it and say that there's missed opportunities if you've read the books. But I'm saying if you haven't read the books, how well does this work? And I think that it works pretty well if you have not read the books. If you don't know the alternative storyline, then and even with the end of, I guess, let's call it the first act of this film, where he parks the car on the train tracks and all of that, and then that's when, like, Mr. Poe rescues them and then brings them to Uncle Monty and all of that, then I thought, like, I liked that. I thought that made sense. And that Olaf is then able to redeem himself by saving Klaus and the children from the leeches on Lake Lachrymose. I'm like, oh, I like that too, that's how he reacquires them. And it would make sense because Mr. Poe, consistent with his character, is just a complete doofus. You know what I mean? He's so, I don't know, ignorant, naive, something, that of course he would fall for it. So all of that to me worked pretty well, but there's a bunch of stuff that really doesn't work. I was surprised because I thought that people were going to be mad. Like, I thought I would just be like, oh, people have issues with, like, plot or whatever else, or they went out of order. And then I kept watching because I feel like the first hour or so is pretty good. And then I think it just, like, the wheels fall off.
I think that's fair. Which is interesting because, like, the first, act or whatever, the first third, then it sticks very close to the book, to The Bad Beginning. And then and even, like, the train sequence, as you mentioned, like, that works so well because Violet invents something.
Shows her inventing skills. And
with,
like, getting Klaus, who's, like, read up on trains, even though he doesn't have a book there. He's like, right, they switch tracks, and then she invents something to fix it, and Sonny gets a way to bite something, and all of that.
And the visualization of Klaus, remembering what he read in the books. Oh, that's so well done.
Yeah.
Like it's so simple, but it's like, wow, yeah, that's perfect.
Right. That's
You
what
don't
I'm
need to
saying.
see the words on the page, just seeing the book pop out of the shelf, and you're like, okay, I get
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And that's where I'm saying that it actually works quite well, where it's different from the books, but you have to do different stuff because film is a visual medium and literature, some literature is visual in nature, depending on how an author describes things. But A Series of Unfortunate Events is not really. The first few books are very much about wordplay.
Mhm.
And then we talked about this extensively, but they tend to be about wordplay, and then they become more mystery
Yeah.
stories, and then it becomes towards the end kind of allegorical, and then abandons that, and
Right.
yeah, it's like allegorical, maybe metaphysical, and then no, never mind, it's just an island. um,
Yeah.
so anyway, but I'm saying that the film, just through that montage of just him pulling out the books, it tells us everything that we need to know of him reading. Because, like, what are you going to do? Show him sitting there reading, and then just like what Snicket would do, just an encyclopedic list of all of the things that he's read and interesting little side stories. They could, if they adapted it too closely to the books, it would have been brutal.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, and I'm just really, really curious as to what your reaction is going to be to the Netflix series, because it's different from the movie, but I also feel like it's um, yeah, it does a lot of different stuff. So anyway,
Okay.
um, yeah, it's we'll get to that when we get to it. But
Mhm.
yeah, sticking to this film, um, yeah, I think that the one thing that is reoccurring is this discussion of sanctuary,
Mhm.
which works really well in the film.
Yeah.
This idea of just this small place, you know, uh, uh, away from the world,
Mm.
and the way that Uncle Monty brings it up,
Mm.
and the way that the children discover as they're with each guardian that there's some connection to their parents. It all works really, really well that way, because there's obviously the film came out in 2004. I don't know exactly when the final draft of the screenplay would have been written, but Handler had a much better sense of the books by the time that they
Yes,
uh,
I agree.
had started to work on the script. So um, yeah, so I think that it benefits from that, from him being able to say, okay, well, I kind of know where things are going. I know the bigger story that I want to tell, which isn't in the first three
No,
books.
it's not in the first few books at all, and I was surprised how many little references and hints that you get about VFD right from the very beginning. I think the book series would have functioned better if that happened.
Yeah, I agree.
So I liked the fact that you did get it introduced as early as you did in the movie, but also I think that if there was a case to be made for um, getting a sequel and then like turning it into a series of films, then you
Mhm.
have to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, it is very interesting. Up until, as far as I saw, 2009, there were still, thoughts of doing a sequel. Like, it was still
Huh.
up in the air as to whether or not it would happen. Um, yeah, the director Brad Silberling was still, interested in doing it. Even Jim Carrey said that he would love to keep doing the films, because he would get to play a different character in each one.
Sure.
Uh, but of
Yeah.
course, with all the with the kids aging up, then there was some, concerns over that.
Well,
Um,
yeah. Like, I mean, of course, Jim Carrey's great with that, but you can't
right.
do that with children, with
Yeah.
child actors. You
Yeah.
can't wait 5 years from when it was released. So really, ultimately, that's like, 6 years or so since they were filming.
Yeah. Yeah, and so then they had also talked about potentially doing it as like an animated film. And then they were like, oh, maybe we'll do like each film in the series in a different medium, and just basically at the beginning of the second film, then they would be like, they would just have Lemony Snicket say like, whereas the first film, was a dramatic recreation using actors, this is the actual events, or something along those lines.
Mm.
So, yeah, they were working on, coming up with different ways that they could get around the fact that the actors had aged out of the roles.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm not quite sure why, the film didn't end up, the sequel didn't end up getting made.
Huh. Well, I mean, probably because the movie didn't really make money.
Right. Yeah. And even, reception was not the greatest.
Exactly. So there was no indication that people would go and see a sequel. Right. That a lot of people would have been disappointed, and a lot of the original kids who were like original fans of the series, many of them would have aged out of it by that point. Because even if they had read the books by like 2009, 2010, a lot of them probably would have just said, I'm not interested. And I don't know how many new readers continue to come along into the series. And I don't know how good of a job the film did in introducing, viewers of the film to the book series.
Yes. Yeah. On the note of child actors, though, I do have to note that Klaus looks far too old. I don't know how old the actor was at the time of filming, but yeah, he had like already gone through puberty pretty much.
Yeah.
Just like, what is going on here? And he doesn't wear his glasses at all.
I have more than any other character in this film. I think maybe the only character that I have issues with in the film is Klaus.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is casting, how much of that is acting choices compared to directing, compared to the screenplay, but Klaus is a complete jerk in this film.
Yeah,
he's
angry.
A brat. Yeah, he's a brat. He's angry the entire time. Him and Violet, they just argue with each other. Yep. And it's like none of the dynamics from the books. That's what I'm saying, is like the few things you have to keep consistent. Characters, so it's like, well, that's all messed up. And then dynamics between characters, it's like, well, that's all messed up. The themes are kind of all over the place, and tone is all over the place as well.
Yeah.
And but like I think partially what goes wrong, like, because I did, I noted a few instances of this. Like, for instance, when he's reading through Aunt Josephine's suicide note, and then he's pointing out the spelling mistakes, and then Violet's like, she's dead, why would you point out the spelling mistakes? And he's like, there's another spelling mistake, she wouldn't do this, right? Like, it just turns into an argument.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where in the books, it's obvious, like, basically when Violet is inventing, Klaus doesn't say anything. It's like she ties her hair up in like with her ribbon, and it's just like Klaus is just looks on in awe and admiration of his sister, going, she's doing something. And
right.
Then like when he needs to research something, that he doesn't say anything to her. He just grabs a book and he just carefully studies the text, flipping pages, and Violet's like, ooh, look at that reader go. And then in this one, then it's like she like starts inventing something and he's like, do something. And I'm like, so your dynamics are all messed up, but is it because they were worried that people who had not read the books would not understand what was happening unless you have somebody like a character, peppering them with questions the entire time and them responding angrily? Is that it?
I'm not sure. I know, because the one that really comes to mind in terms of Violet inventing is, when she tells Klaus, okay, yeah, we're gonna, throw the anchor over the edge here to break that beam. And then he's like, you want to break that? And then she's like, okay, you just have to trust me. And it's like, yeah, you already said that you have to trust her. Like,
right.
She's the inventor. Trust in her.
That's the thing, is like Klaus seems really angry with Violet, and vice versa to some degree, but it's more he's angry with her. He's angry with everybody in this film. But in that instance, then it's like, well, Klaus, what are you thinking? You think that she wants you guys to die? Like
Yeah.
that they don't. I
You
actually
brought the anchor all the way over there without asking any questions. You get it over there, and then you start being like, wait, are you sure you know what you're doing?
right. I feel like Klaus, who's not the inventor, he mansplains his way throughout the film. Like, do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
that it's
Yeah.
so it undercuts Violet's abilities in this film throughout that
Mm.
then at the end of the film, like appalled, and I'm saying like I'm not I have an appreciation for feminist criticism, and I mean that like in terms of film criticism or literary criticism. Then like feminist criticism is a specific school of thought, and so I really do enjoy feminist criticism. And like it's not like the cultural criticism necessarily, right? But it's specifically within film or literature, and of course it does touch on culture as well. But I'm saying it's not my area of specialty. But even I was like, it's impossible to miss how appalling this is in what it does to Violet and her character, because we talked about this when we were reading the series. And Violet is like, as you read the series, and maybe we're a little clueless, or maybe it kind of shifted in intent, but we did note that it seems as you read the books that more and more they are written for girls to girls,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like that it's specifically written with girls in mind. And so really I think Violet in many ways is much more of a protagonist, in part because she's older, but also, let's be honest, inventing is more useful than just having the ideas that Klaus gets from books.
Right.
Uh, and so she's very much the protagonist of the series. And then what do they do in this movie? She just stands on stage, a helpless victim, and
Yeah.
gets married off and
Yeah.
does essentially nothing. She is a completely passive female waiting for a man to rescue her. And then
She
Klaus,
literally says like that, she just gives up that,
yeah,
okay, there's nothing that we can do. This is
right.
just how life is. And it's like, what? What are you doing?
Violet from the books would not do that. And
No.
then Klaus, he's able to then just, all that he has to do is just go WWVD. What would Violet do? That's literally what he says. He's like, what would Violet do? And then he's like, let me
Yeah.
think. And then it's like, oh, apparently if a man thinks for 2 seconds that he can acquire any ability, that no matter how competent and talented a woman is, a man can acquire those abilities within seconds of just thinking, what would
Yeah.
that chick do? Because then he's able to come up with the invention of the grappling hook. And it's like, so you took what you said was your favorite invention of the book series that Violet invents. They just give it to Klaus while she stands on stage and just passively lets the villain win.
And it's just an umbrella.
And it's just an umbrella. And then, he comes up with the reader is able to like use this device to then burn the marriage certificate and
Not
all
to
of
mention
that.
the things that he uses to climb up the rope.
Oh,
I don't even know what that was. I was like kind of trying to see. I'm like, what is this that he's using?
yeah. Like, I think they're like, I don't know, like, like handmade jumars, which are like in rock climbing, like, you know what I mean? You like squeeze it and like it'll
Yeah,
like
yeah.
slide down, but then you let go and it locks. I think
Right.
something like that. Anyway, like he somehow makes his own versions of this that
Yeah.
they just took all of Violet's badass inventing skills and gave them to Klaus, and he's also the reader, and he saves the kids, like his
Yeah.
entire, like his two siblings. And that I'm just like, and for a book series that I'm pretty sure is targeted more so towards girls than boys, and certainly for this age group, to do that is appalling. Like
Yeah.
I think that's pretty disgusting that they did that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if other people have commented on that, but to me it's a real issue.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. This film definitely changes the main character from Violet to Klaus.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's awful. The way that women in general are depicted in this film, because the only other two females that you have really are or Justice Strauss,
Yep.
who is the one who just goes along with it and marries off
Naively
Violet.
does it and then doesn't even try to undo it. What have I
Yeah,
done? Let me run away.
yeah, literally.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have Aunt Josephine, who is scared of literally everything.
Yes.
These
The
are
most timid,
great.
passive. That's what I'm saying. Is like I don't understand it. Ugh, who I mean, like I say, I'm not. This is not my area of specialty, so it's not something that I get fired up about. Because I don't focus on like I say, I have an appreciation, but it's just I don't focus particularly on this particular school of thought.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine how feminist critics would feel about this film. Like if they've read the book series, it's it's really troubling to me. You know, that if you're going to bring your if you have a daughter or daughters and they really like the books, and you bring them to the movie theater to go and see this, and that's what you get. That's your reward. That oh, just make the boy the hero, and the girl who was this incredibly talented inventor, deny her all of that and just give it to her brother and let him carry the plot and be the hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. With Justice Strauss, with Aunt Josephine. I mean, Aunt Josephine is like, it's at least consistent with the book, but Justice
Yeah.
Strauss is not a wimp like that.
No.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know, because she doesn't have um any real redeeming qualities in the film.
no,
She definitely does in the book series, but in the film, then it's just, oh yeah, she owns this pretty house. She's, watering all her flowers out front and everything.
yeah,
And she doesn't quote the law at all. She
no.
is just a prop for Olaf to use in his, scheme.
Yeah, good thing
That's
they
all she
spent.
is.
Yeah, exactly. Good thing they spent really good money to get Catherine O'Hara to play this
Yeah,
nothing role. Like
honestly.
they could have had anybody play that role. Like to
Yeah.
get a big Hollywood actress, like a big name as a Hollywood actress, to get her to play that role is like, come on.
Mhm.
Do more if you're going to have Catherine O'Hara. She's so funny. She's such a great actress that
Yeah.
they didn't give her a single line that was comedic.
Yep. Yeah.
So the other thing too that I wanted to mention is that I feel like maybe part of the reason why the dynamics between Klaus and Violet are not great is that there's really not a lot of interaction with Olaf in the movie,
Mm,
and so you don't really have an antagonist. So
right.
instead, they just become foils for each other. Violet and
Mm,
Klaus. They become antagonistic towards each other because there's no tension. There's no
right.
drama going on in this scene. And it's like, yeah, because Olaf isn't here, and Olaf isn't here, and Olaf isn't here, and Olaf isn't here. But it doesn't is and it can't just be about them escaping all the time. So there has to be some tension, some emotional drama. So just cause emotional drama between the kids
Yeah.
instead of them having antipathy towards Olaf, the audience then having antipathy towards Olaf. I think we end up kind of picking a side of, are we on Violet or Klaus's side, because they're just spending all of this time arguing with each other. Um, if you see what I don't know if that quite makes sense, but it's that Olaf is, as much as he's like orchestrating these plans, he ultimately doesn't feel like the cause of things. Like let's say
Yeah.
with like we don't really see him do anything to Uncle Monty, even though we know that he does. You do
Mhm.
have him leaving the kids in the car, but he just kind of hides in the store the entire time, so he's not directly interacting with them. Then Lake Lacrimose, then you've got a hurricane, you've got the house falling off the edge of the cliff, then you've got the boat, and you've got the leeches, and all that stuff. It's like Olaf's not there, he's not there, he's not there, until the
Mhm.
very end with the climax, which is hardly a climax at all. But that's what I'm saying, that like these books, it's not Harry Potter, it's not big, huge stakes. They're very low stakes, not huge um, it's not life and death for the entire world the way you get in Harry Potter. So I'm going like, it's not going to be a Harry Potter franchise because that's just, it doesn't have those kinds of stakes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be a war. It's just like, who are they going to end up with next?
Right. Yep.
But because you don't have all these interactions with Olaf, then I feel like he doesn't really feel all that villainous. Like I actually felt like, and I think also the issue is that Jim Carrey is far too charismatic, I think, to play Olaf. He's not despicable. He's fun.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Even
the perfect example of everything that you're talking about here is when the children are making the pasta puttanesca, and so they're off in the kitchen making the food, and then we literally just get that intercut with Count Olaf, aka Jim Carrey, just being like, okay, this is one I call electric chair.
Right.
I think you need to turn the knob up. Like, I'm just like, what? This is not Count Olaf. Like, he's not menacing here at all.
No, like, he's not menacing. He's not really creepy. He's not really disgusting. And he's too good at playing these roles. He's too good of an actor. Like, I'm saying, like, because you then have him, like, doing the, like, who shall play the handsomest man in the world, and he stands like, or sits like this, right? And it's funny, it's kind of charming. And then when he plays the dinosaur with the theater troupe, you know what I mean? Right. It's funny, it's charming. And then when he plays Stefano, I have been trying to nail that voice, the voice that he puts on for, I'm Stefano, like, I don't know, I can't get it.
I am an Italian man.
It's so funny that I'm just like, just give me more Stefano and far less Klaus. Klaus is so obnoxious, but Olaf is so fun.
Yeah.
Which is
even Captain Sham is, fantastic.
Captain Sham was great.
The very meal I had before they took my leg.
Right. Yeah. All of it is, that's what I'm saying, is that Jim Carrey he's too charismatic, and then you just make Klaus angry the entire time, scowling at everybody, snapping at everybody, including his sister, and you feel for her. At least I did. I'm just like, she's figuring stuff out. She's actually doing things, and you just keep shouting. And then when he's trying to figure things out, then she just starts, questioning him. And so I'm like, I don't like the kids, but I like Olaf, which is not supposed to be these books, right? That I literally, it's like, I've read 13 books, didn't like Olaf at all, ever. In this, I'm like, Olaf's the greatest character ever. That's all Jim Carrey's fault. It's because they cast somebody who's just too charismatic. Like, even like the worst I've seen Jim Carrey's maybe like the number 23, where he plays a villain, and even then I'm like, he's still great.
Yeah.
Like, who dislikes Jim Carrey?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And it is oh man. Okay, because we get more on Klaus being incredibly I don't know, changed from the books is the fact that he is angry at their parents. that moment, I'm just like, what? They just died, like, maybe a week ago.
Yeah.
And you're just like, how could they do this to us? How are you not still just like thinking of all these, great memories of them, which is something that the book talks about, that invisible line that they didn't cross for so long, right? And you don't get that. Klaus is just angry immediately.
No, I agree with you. That's exactly it. It's that the tone in that case is all off. And then the character of Klaus is all off. The themes are all off, all in that scene. Because you're exactly right. And I'm saying that everything else is, you could point to all these different things that are different, right? Then I say, I don't have a problem with any of these things. It's just theme, character, and tone. That's what you can't change.
Yeah.
Because you're not only going to, it's usually like it's not just like the plot that is what makes a book effective. It's those things. It's theme, character, and tone that people think of more than anything else.
Yeah.
Plot, yes, but you can play around with that, and still, as long as you've got the same characters that I can recognize, that we can identify, and themes and tone, you can put them into different situations, but that character would react that way in that situation because we've learned who they are from reading through these books. And to just get it that wrong just shows a lack of appreciation for, and I think in some ways it's a lack of appreciation and a lack of knowledge, and maybe even a lack of respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly like a lack of understanding of what the books are, right?
Yeah.
It's not Klaus. It's just, frankly, it isn't.
No, and so he's really different, and does that work?
Right. And it doesn't.
No. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Olaf is different. Olaf is supposed to be a terrible actor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be that nobody, that the kids can see through his disguises and his roles and all this stuff so easily, but the adults don't. And instead, he's pretty good at it. So then it doesn't work as a piece of comedy where it's like, how are the adults missing this? It's supposed to be so ridiculous that they could be so stupid to not see that he is clearly Olaf. And instead, it's, I don't know, that's pretty hard to tell because he's doing a good job of playing that role.
Right. Yeah. And even during the wedding at the end, where you have a cameo by Dustin Hoffman for some reason.
I was going to ask you about that. I was just looking it up. That's what I was doing. I'm like, what on earth was Dustin Hoffman doing in this movie?
No idea.
And then they had Craig Ferguson. I don't know if you noticed that, but playing the person of indeterminate gender.
Right.
You get Craig Ferguson. I mean, maybe he's not commanding a huge salary, but still, you get Craig Ferguson. And then, I don't even know who Dustin Hoffman is supposed to be in this.
He's a theater critic.
Who loves the play.
Yeah! That's the thing, is that, you've got Dustin Hoffman, and literally the entire audience there is loving it. Yeah. Read the book, and it says that people were falling asleep during the play.
Right. And it's that...
I didn't know they had this kind of budget. What are you talking about?
Right. And I'm saying that you could play it differently, for sure. You could definitely have... I guess my issue is not so much that the plot is changed in that way. It's that the character of Olaf, so much of the comedy from the books comes from the fact that it is completely absurd that adults do not recognize that is Olaf in disguise because he's a terrible actor. But he is so vain that he believes he's like a Michael Scott character is how I've described him, right? He is so overly confident, but so under-talented.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And instead, he's very confident and very talented. And you go, well, now he's not buffoonish. He's not absurd. He just actually is a pretty fun actor in playing these different roles. So yeah, this is an entertaining product, but then you're going, but then you've lost all of the comedy that you just had of, we don't resent Mr. Poe by going, how do you not see it? We don't resent Uncle Monty for saying, how do you not see it? It's like, yeah, it'd be kind of hard to not see it. Or Aunt Josephine, how do you not see it? It's like, because he's doing a good job. It's supposed to be he's doing a terrible job. And I think that it would be so much funnier, which the film, I don't even know, is this supposed to be a comedy?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying, tone. Let's just get into that. Because I'm like, certainly by the end, it ends up being so sentimental, so saccharine, you know what I mean? Just so sweet and syrupy. And I'm just like, ugh. And I understand that there's definitely moments in the books like that, which I didn't really care for either, because I said you can't have it be completely absurd and then move into sincerity if it's absurd for 95 to 98% of the book, and then just have a few paragraphs. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, it's by the end of the film, I'm like, So what is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be like a mystery about the secret of VFD and this huge organization that everybody's involved in? Or is this supposed to be this absurdist postmodern comedy? Or is this supposed to be this whimsical Tim Burton-esque universe? Or is this supposed to be some kind of, heartwarming, sentimental coming of age story of how important family is? And
The
I
answer
think
to
the answer
all is yes.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. The answer is yes. It's all of those. It's like, oh, this isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so we did say a lot of, things that work really, really well and a lot of things that really, really don't. Um, but I want to go into like a few more of the little differences. So one is Lemony Snicket in the clock tower, and him driving away at the end. Um, okay, and especially when his typewriter, when his ribbon jams or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Um, what are your feelings on that?
I can't, like, I know, what was he describing at that point?
He was describing the incredibly deadly Viper
Oh,
heading
right.
right at Sunny, and we didn't get the Viper did not bite Sunny. It
No.
just, went and
Yeah.
then curled up with her.
It's an attempt to replicate in film what Handler was playing with in text, where Handler would, I've said it before, that it's essentially TV logic, where he'll say, hey, like I hope that you fall asleep during this part, so I'll tell you a really boring story so that way you'll miss all of this scary stuff. And then when you wake up, then all the scary stuff will be over. And it's TV logic, as though the pages continue to flip and continue to turn while you sleep, the way a TV show will continue to play. And it was very much like, oh, the movie is being written in real time, like
Right.
playing with this idea, and it's
Yeah.
trying to replicate that joke. And I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think that works at all. They easily could have said, I don't know, just I don't really know what they could have done, but like it doesn't work.
The ribbon jamming is weird. It could have just been Snicket saying, I hate to do this, but I should have mentioned before that this is an incredibly frightening part. And if you're sensitive to these types of things, like very much a Snicket voice.
Yes.
Instead, the ribbon jamming it's not a Snicket voice, right?
Yeah.
That Snicket will intentionally manipulate the story for the sake of his reader. And that's not what's happening here. It's saying, oh, what a coincidence, this super scary, exciting part, then we have to stop it because my ribbon jammed. And that's what I'm saying. It's playing off of the way he plays with, how the story is being told using TV logic, and then it's trying to use this writing logic to, a movie. But it's not who Snicket as a persona is.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I would say other than Klaus, like Lemony Snicket is the character that I have, the most issue, or the biggest issue with.
When you bring that up, I don't like Snicket in this.
Yeah, because he's not Snicket. I don't know, he's just this suave storyteller who is all sentimental,
right?
Like completely, I don't know, he is in such admiration of the Baudelaires in a weird kind of way, where he's just like, I don't know. Yeah, it's so
agree.
Off.
It's really off, and it's because I don't think that they knew what they were doing. And I'm like, is this like $140 million, big blockbuster film? It's like explosions and the stakes are like the world could end if we don't do this, and or is this a really small, scaled down, like essentially it feels like a period piece, right? Where it's like incredibly, it's like, am I watching Little Women? Like, what the hell am I watching here, right?
Yeah.
Like, you kind of got this sentimental attitude, towards everything that's happening, and he's not amping up the stakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not. I don't know. He adds virtually nothing
Yeah.
to the film, and I think that's really what it is. Like he has a little bit at the beginning, he has a little bit at the end, and then a couple moments here or there throughout the film that really don't work. I do really like, when he does the whole, and the children went off to Peru with their Uncle Monty, and, the end. I wish that I could tell these words.
Right.
I'm like,
That was very much a Snicket thing.
yeah, I'm like, that works. That works really, really well. But yeah, this other stuff that I'm just like, I don't know. And even with yeah, and that actually does lead me to one of my other things is the opening of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I don't know about you, but I really, really love The Littlest Elf.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I thought that was good.
Yeah.
They really captured that, and it was a wise choice to show the contrast of,
Yes.
you know what I mean? It introduces this little reference that you get in the books of The Littlest Elf and saying it's much better if you go and watch that movie than watch this movie. And it's playing right now. It's very much in the style and tone of the books. And it does a good job of then introducing us to this story universe that is nothing like The Littlest Elf.
Yeah.
It's not bright. It's not colorful. It's not fun in that way. No, that part was very effective. I liked that. That's what I'm saying is like, I feel like the first, 2/3 of the film, I think are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes so much with the, antagonism between the siblings and just kind of from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, with Aunt Josephine's house falling off the cliff, that is done really, really well. How everything that Aunt Josephine was scared of happening actually happens. I'm like,
absolutely,
that's great. That is fantastic.
I made a note of that, and that's so much better than what you get in the book.
Yeah.
I loved the fact that she says all these crazy, ridiculous things, and then every single one of them, like the fridge could fall on us, like the doorknob, don't use the doorknob because it could explode and blind you, and all of these things. And it's just one after the other. I thought that was so effective and so well done. That's why I'm saying that, like, the first hour or so, I'm going, oh, that was good. That was good. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite parts of the film. I thought that the film did a better job than the book with that.
Yeah. I think that's about it for me. That it was just such I don't know, because I saw this film in theaters when it came out. I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it, but I think I didn't enjoy it for, different reasons than the reasons why, I have issues with it now.
Right. Yeah. Because I think that's what I'm saying, that I feel like I've done enough teaching that I've experienced that it tends to be more of a juvenile mindset, and that you tend to mature out of when you're looking at a film and then you go, I read the book. This movie's bad because it's not just like the book. Yeah. Right. And that's, I'm not saying that that's an unfair criticism for a kid to make, right? Because I get it, that if you're a kid and you read a book and you really like it, then you want to see it on screen, and then you're disappointed if the plot's different. But I'm saying that you should be more disappointed about characters and theme and tone.
And I guess the other major thing is this whole refraction of light thing that Count Olaf has in his attic. I don't care for that. As we had discussed, during our chapter 14 wrap up, or I guess it was chapter 9 to 13 of Book the 13th. I like how it's left a little ambiguous as to whether or not Count Olaf actually burned down the mansion. And in this, it's the first film, and it's so directly just being like, yep, he did it. Here's how he did it. And, like, I'm just like, oh, what? Oh, okay, this is weird. Klaus, why don't you show this to the authorities or something?
It's a great point. It's a great point.
And because even Snicket is like, oh, my son, fire started. It's like, what do you mean? You just wrote that Klaus found all this.
Right. Yep. Okay, I've got a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. One, okay. I absolutely love it when Dustin Hoffman turns to Cedric the Entertainer, and then when Violet is marrying Count Olaf, and then Hoffman says, she doesn't deserve him. And he's like, no, she doesn't, right? I love that, because for one thing, you never hear that from, like, the girl doesn't deserve the guy. So it's a funny joke. But then, because he's such a despicable character, but at the same time that it's also like, yeah, this film doesn't deserve Jim Carrey. Like, and maybe that's not quite the way to put it. It's that, like, I just think that he's miscast for this film.
Yeah.
I think it's too hard. Like, how do you tell him, act like, don't be funny, but try to be funny? Because that's basically what Olaf is doing. Olaf is trying to be funny, but he's not funny. And he's trying to play these roles, but he's not doing a good job, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know how Steve Carell does it so well on The Office, right? Because he's so not funny by trying to be funny, which ultimately ends up being very, very funny.
Right. Yeah.
Right? That I'm going, that's hard to do. It's like, be really obnoxious, but think that you're really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, anyway, I just like that whole, she doesn't deserve him. And then the other thing is, why did they not get any of the eye symbols, tattoos and otherwise? Why did none of them come even close to looking like they could be read as VFD?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was wondering that too. I know, it is so... I'm just like, what is happening? It's just an eye. There's no way.
There was no way to see a V, an F, or a D in that. They were just straight up eyeballs all over the place. And then I'm going, but you've introduced VFD, and this is 2004. You definitely know what VFD stands for, and that's not actually an eyeball. It's supposed to be their logo, their insignia that actually says VFD or whatever, however to spell it in air. But it kind of bothered me. I was like, what the?
I think I had told you before that, there are quite a few variations of the design of the VFD eye logo. And that I pretty much picked my favorite for what we have on the intro and all that. And yeah, this one, not even a contender. Like, it's just, this isn't anything.
No. Yeah, well, we one of the titles in the, like, extra long title that we have for the book series is Ignore the Tattoo. And in this film, yeah, absolutely, please ignore it, because it's actually less than helpful. It doesn't, you can't see a VFD in there, so that doesn't do anything for the storyline.
Yeah, it is, it's so odd. And I, before I forget again, I should mention, I think at some point during our previous recordings, I had mentioned that Daniel Handler has a cameo in this film as the accordion player. I was incorrect. He does play the accordion, and he has performed in quite a few different bands. But in this film, his cameo appearance is as a photographer. And I believe it is at Uncle Monty's house.
Okay.
So, like when they're like photographing the body.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and they did a great job with Uncle Monty as being an incredibly likable character.
Absolutely.
That they nailed. I will say that. They nailed that one.
Yeah, I really do. It feels like such a waste to have Billy Connolly be in that role and it's just like not be there at all.
I guess maybe the reason why I actually like the fact that we get very little with him is I feel like if we got even a little bit more, they would have found a way to screw it up. So I'm just like, fair. those like 10 minutes that we have are great in terms of
Yeah.
like the overall film. I would say like if I were to revise this, I would say that part you don't need to touch. That part's great.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. And I think the other reason why that works really, really well is because of this whole discussion of Sanctuary being this
Yes.
small place, and that those, 10 or so minutes, it's a small amount of the film that is this break from the
Yes.
rest of all the
Absolutely. That's really well said.
dark stuff of the rest. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That's a great point because it does really function well in that way.
mhm. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll probably have a little bit more to say once we get into the Netflix series and seeing how the first 3 books get adapted in that, and then thinking about this film.
Yes.
So we'll probably have more to add when we get into the Netflix series. But in the meantime, that we're going to move on and we're going to watch the first 2 episodes of it?
Yep. And yeah, you will notice, I think fairly early on, that the spyglass returns.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it does. There's only one very brief mention in the books of a spyglass, and that is at VFD headquarters in the Mortmain Mountains. So, and I don't know whether that was written, you know, like if Daniel Handler knew the final script for the movie yet. But I feel like it might have been a retroactive thing where he was like, okay, yeah, I'll put the spyglass into the books in this one little reference. But yeah, it definitely comes back in the Netflix series as well.
Maybe they're thinking because like that's something like somebody who is a lookout for
Hmm.
fires. Then they'll be up on a hill and they'll use
Yeah,
a spyglass, a telescope, binoculars to scan the horizon for potential fires. And so
yeah. I think that it might be partly that, and then also the fact that it is a spy glass.
right, right,
So,
okay. Very confusing.
yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, feel free to comment below on any of the stuff that we talked about. What did you like in this movie? What did you not like? Feel free
Oh yes,
to.
the music. The music was great, especially during The Littlest Elf.
The
That theme
Littlest
song.
Elf music is good. The rest of it, I feel like, is all over the place in terms of tone.
That's true, but the end credits, that music is also really, really well done.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
I'll
that
agree.
whole style there of, them moving through the plots of the movie in that, I don't know what to call it, like kind of like South Park style,
Uh-huh.
animation.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I don't know enough about animation to know exactly how to describe it, but you are right that it is very much like that.
Yeah,
Very two-dimensional.
yeah, yeah. Sorry for, cutting you off in the middle of the sign off, but I just
No, no.
realized that we didn't
Yeah.
mention that.
No, I think that's fair. But feel free to comment below on, what did you like, what did you not like, favorite characters, what worked, what did not work, how do you like this in comparison to the books, in comparison to the Netflix series, any of that stuff, and
Yep.
like
And
it and share it.
specifically, which actor was most underutilized? Is it Billy Connolly or Meryl Streep or Dustin Hoffman or Cedric the Entertainer? So many good options
There's
there.
so many good options of who was most underused in this film. The fact that they cast them, I don't even understand. It's like, why would you cast such big names knowing that a lot of them are just going to disappear?
I know.
Justice Strauss, they get Catherine O'Hara, or like Meryl Streep for Aunt Josephine, who never comes back. I don't get
So
it.
strange.
Who's
So please
most
comment
underused?
that below.
Yeah. Where exactly did they spend far too much money for essentially no contribution? And it's not the actor's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.